My fiancé said, "Let's take a short break to clear our heads." I said, "Sounds fair." That night, I sent screenshots of his break activities to his dad and requested a refund from the wedding planner. 2 days later, he showed up at my door crying, only to see a for sale sign in the yard. Hello, everyone. My name is Naomi Carter. I'm 34, and until recently, I thought I understood the relationship I was in. I thought I was planning a wedding. I didn't realize I was standing in the middle of a goodbye he had already started writing without me. Ryan and I had been together for close to 3 years. We were only a few months away from getting married, and from the outside, everything about us looked stable. Not perfect, but steady. The kind of relationship people describe as mature because there are no public fights, no dramatic breakups, no screaming in parking lots. We had a routine. We had a wedding timeline. We had families already talking like the marriage was guaranteed. His dad had helped with some wedding expenses. My side had started planning travel. And the wedding planner knew both of our names by heart. That kind of stability can make you ignore things. Small things. The way Ryan started keeping his phone angled away from me. The way he stopped mentioning certain friends by name. The way his answers became clean, short, and too easy. I felt those little changes before I admitted them to myself. Because when you love someone, your heart becomes very talented at explaining away the things your instincts are begging you to notice. But nothing truly changed until one quiet evening. There was no argument, no crying, no slammed door. Ryan sat across from me and said he had been feeling overwhelmed lately. He said everything had been moving too fast. He said maybe we needed to take a short break to clear our heads. The way he said it bothered me more than the words. It was too calm, too prepared, like he wasn't asking me a question, like he was presenting a decision he had already made and waiting for me to accept it. I looked at him for a moment, waiting to feel panic. But it never came. I just said, "Sounds fair." He blinked, like he had expected resistance. Maybe tears, maybe questions. Maybe me asking what a break meant, how long it would last, whether we were still engaged during it. I didn't ask because in that moment I understood something very clearly. When someone asks for space right before a wedding, they are not always asking for time to think. Sometimes they are asking for freedom to act without consequences. Ryan left that night like it was temporary. No dramatic goodbye, no emotional hug, no promise that everything would be okay. Just his jacket, his keys, and that strange, calm expression of a man who thought he had handled something neatly. After the door closed, I stood in the hallway for a while. My chest felt tight, but my hands were steady. That scared me more than crying would have. I didn't call him. I didn't text him. I didn't beg for clarity. I simply paid attention. Because a break reveals more than a confession ever could. The next day didn't start with anything dramatic. No late-night apology. No "I miss you" message. No attempt to define what this break was supposed to look like. Only quiet. But not the peaceful kind. It was the kind that leaves space for things to surface. I didn't go looking for answers right away. I didn't sit there refreshing his messages or checking his location like I was trying to catch him in something. I just observed. Because when someone believes they're no longer being watched, they stop managing how they appear. And that's when the truth starts slipping through. At first, it was nothing obvious. Ryan was active online at odd hours, later than usual, earlier than expected. His patterns didn't match the version of needing space he had described. Someone trying to clear their head doesn't suddenly become more socially active. They withdraw. He didn't. There were comments, reactions, stories posted, then removed. Interactions that looked harmless if you saw them once, but started to feel intentional if you noticed how quickly they disappeared. I didn't screenshot anything yet. Not because I didn't think it mattered, but because I wasn't ready to decide what it meant. I let it sit. I let it build. By the afternoon, something shifted. It wasn't a single post or a single message. It was the timing. He was somewhere he hadn't mentioned before. Not with the friends he usually named. Not in places that made sense for someone taking a break. And then there was her. She didn't appear clearly. No tagged photos. No obvious connection. But she was there in the edges. A reflection in a glass window. A voice in the background of a short video. A username that showed up just long enough before disappearing. It wasn't enough to accuse anyone of anything, but it was enough to make my stomach drop. Because sometimes the proof doesn't arrive as one huge betrayal. Sometimes it arrives in pieces small enough for the other person to deny, but sharp enough for you to bleed from. I leaned back on the couch, phone still in my hand, and stared at the screen for a while. Not angry, not even surprised, just certain, because careful behavior always leaves traces. Small ones, quiet ones, but consistent. And consistency tells the story better than any excuse. I didn't message him. I didn't ask, "Who is she?" Because I already knew what the answer would sound like. It's not what it looks like. It's just a friend. You're overthinking. The usual lines people use when they need time to rebuild the lie before you can name it. I wasn't interested in narratives. I was interested in facts. So I waited. That night, everything lined up just enough. The timing of his activity, the reappearance of that same account, the way posts went up and then vanished like they were meant to be seen by someone specific, but not saved. That's when I took my first screenshot, then another, then a few more, not obsessively. Not digging into anything private, just capturing what was already visible before it disappeared again. I didn't need more than that, because this wasn't about building a case to confront him. It was about understanding what had already changed. And by the second day, the picture was clear. This wasn't distance. This wasn't confusion. This was permission he had given himself. Permission to move freely, to be seen by someone new, to test something without the weight of a relationship that was already supposed to become a marriage. I set my phone down on the table and exhaled slowly. There was no dramatic breaking point, just a quiet realization that something fundamental had shifted long before he said the word break. And once you see that clearly, you stop reacting emotionally. You start thinking clearly, because this wasn't just about me anymore. There was a wedding, deposits, families involved, plans that had already extended beyond the two of us. Pretending nothing had changed would have been the easiest option, and also the worst one. I picked up my phone again, scrolling through the screenshots one more time. Not to convince myself, but to confirm something simple. If someone else looked at this without my heartbreak attached to it, they would still see what I saw. That's when I made the decision. Not impulsively. Not out of anger. Just clearly. Because once something breaks at the foundation, everything built on top of it has to be reconsidered. And I wasn't going to wait for Ryan to decide how that played out. I didn't send the screenshots right away. I sat with them for a while, not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to be very clear about why I was doing it. This wasn't revenge. If it were, I would have sent them to him. I would have forced a reaction, pushed him into explaining, watched him try to twist things into something softer than what they were. But that wasn't the point. Ryan already knew what he was doing. The only people still operating under an outdated version of reality were everyone else, including his family, especially his father. He wasn't just a guest at our wedding. He was part of it. He had contributed financially. He had been involved in the planning. He had spoken to me more than once about how important this next step was, not just for us, but for both families. And if that foundation was already shifting, pretending otherwise didn't make sense. I opened our message thread. My thumb hovered over the screen for a second, not hesitating, just acknowledging the weight of what I was about to do. Then I sent everything. No explanation, no emotional paragraph. Just the screenshots. Clean, quiet, undeniable. For a moment, nothing happened. No immediate reply. No, "What is this?" Just silence. I locked my phone and set it down on the table, like I had just placed something in motion that didn't need me anymore. Because that's what it was, a shift, not loud, not dramatic, but irreversible. A few minutes later, I picked my phone back up, not to check if he had responded, but to make the next call. The wedding planner. Her voice was warm when she answered, the same tone she had used every time we spoke over the past months. Excited, organized, certain. I didn't match it. "Hi, this is Naomi Carter," I said. "I had a few questions about our contract." There was a pause, not uncomfortable, just attentive. "Of course," she said. "What can I help you with?" I didn't say we were canceling. I didn't say anything emotional. I asked practical questions. What are the refund timelines? What happens if we need to postpone? How much is recoverable at this stage? Her tone shifted slightly, not alarmed, but more focused. She explained everything clearly. Deposits that were non-refundable, payments that could still be partially recovered depending on notice, deadlines, options. It was a structured conversation, exactly what I needed, Because when your heart is breaking, structure becomes the only thing that keeps your hands from shaking. When the call ended, I didn't feel lighter. I didn't feel relieved. I just felt aligned with the truth. Like my actions finally matched the reality I had already accepted. That night passed without confrontation. No angry messages, no calls from Ryan, no dramatic fallout, just quiet. But it had weight now, the kind that builds before everything catches up at once. It didn't happen instantly. There was a gap, just long enough for the pressure to move through the people and plans connected to us. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Not because I was anxious, but because something underneath everything had shifted. I made coffee, sat by the window, and let the quiet settle around me. Then my phone lit up. It wasn't Ryan. It was his dad. A message. Short. Direct. Can we talk? I stared at it for a second. No accusation, no assumption. Just a request, which told me everything I needed to know. He had seen it, and he was thinking. I replied simply, "I'm available." The call came a few minutes later. His voice wasn't angry, it wasn't defensive, it was measured. "Naomi," he said, "I saw what you sent." I didn't interrupt. "I just want to understand," he continued. "When did this start?" The question wasn't about blame, it was about timeline, clarity. I answered the way I had approached everything else. Calm, precise. "I noticed changes recently," I said. "The past couple of days made it clearer." Another pause, longer this time. I could hear him breathing on the other end, like he was piecing something together internally. "And you're sure about what you saw?" he asked. I didn't send anything I wasn't sure about. There was no defensiveness in my voice, no attempt to convince him, just the truth, stated plainly. Silence again. Then, finally, a shift. Subtle, but unmistakable. "I'll handle this," he said. That was it. No raised voice, no promise of confrontation, just certainty. And in that moment, I realized something important. This wasn't going to stay between Ryan and me anymore. It had already moved beyond that. Because once other people are involved in the foundation, they become part of what happens when it cracks. A couple of hours later, my phone lit up again. This time, it was Ryan. The first message came through like he was testing the ground. "Did you talk to my dad?" I didn't respond immediately, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I wasn't interested in getting pulled into something reactive. A few minutes passed, then another message. "Why would you send him anything?" There it was. Not confusion, not concern, frustration, because something had moved outside of his control. I picked up my phone, read both messages again, and typed a single response. "Because he's involved in what happens next." I hit send. His reply came faster this time. "That wasn't your place." I read it once, then again. Still no anger in me, just clarity. Because the moment someone says that, it tells you what they're protecting. Not the relationship, not the truth, the image. I didn't answer right away, and that pause made him fill the space. Another text came in. "You're taking things out of context." Then another. "It's not what it looks like." I almost smiled at that one. Not because it was funny, because it was exactly what I knew he would say. There are only so many ways someone can respond when the story slips out of their hands. I set my phone down. If I responded now, it would turn into a loop. He would explain, I would question, he would adjust, and the facts would slowly get buried under performance. I wasn't doing that. A few minutes later, my phone rang. Ryan. I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. Then I picked up. "Naomi, what are you doing?" His voice came through sharp, controlled, but just barely. "I'm here," I said calmly. "That's not what I meant." "Why would you send that to my dad?" I let the question sit for a second. "I didn't send anything that wasn't already happening." "That wasn't your decision." "It was," I said. "Because this doesn't just affect you." Silence. Not long, but enough to change something in the air between us. When he spoke again, his voice was different, less sharp, more careful. "We were just taking a break," he said. "You're blowing this into something bigger than it is." That was the first time he said it like that. Small, reduced, manageable, and it confirmed everything. Because if it really was just a break, none of this would have scared him so much. You asked for space, I said. I gave it to you. You just didn't expect me to see what you did with it. He exhaled on the other end, like he was trying to reset the conversation. That doesn't mean you go behind my back and send things to my family. I didn't go behind your back, I said. I stopped standing in front of you. That landed. I could feel it. Another silence. This one longer. He tried again, softer now. You're overreacting. No, I said. I'm finally reacting to the truth. He didn't respond right away. For the first time since the call started, he didn't have something ready. When he finally spoke, it wasn't with confidence. Naomi, we can fix this. I closed my eyes for a second. Not because I was emotional, because I recognized the shift from denial to damage control, and those are not the same thing. This isn't something you fix after, I said. It's something you don't break in the first place. Silence. He didn't argue with that. He couldn't. The call ended shortly after. No resolution, no agreement. Just a quiet understanding that whatever this had been, it wasn't that anymore. Later that afternoon, my phone rang again. This time, it was the wedding planner. Her tone was different now. Still professional, but more careful. I just spoke with Ryan's father, she said. He asked for a full breakdown of payments, timelines, and refund options. Of course he did. I didn't react. I already knew this wasn't staying contained. When something like this comes up, she continued gently, it usually means plans may change. I just wanted to make sure you're informed on your options. I am, I said, and I meant it. Because this wasn't only emotional anymore. It was structural, and structures don't collapse all at once. They shift, then crack. Then everything connected to them starts adjusting whether you're ready or not. That evening, my phone stayed quiet. No more messages from Ryan, no more calls. No late-night attempt to talk things through, just distance. But this time, it wasn't the kind he had asked for. It was the kind he couldn't control. The next morning, my phone lit up again. Ryan. I let it ring once before answering. Not to play games, just to remind myself I didn't owe him urgency anymore. When I picked up, he didn't ease into the conversation. No, hey, no attempt to soften it. You went too far, he said immediately. His voice wasn't loud, but it was tight, like he was holding something back. I leaned against the counter, letting the words settle. Too far? I repeated. Yes. You had no right to send that to my dad. There it was again. Not denial, not apology, just the same point in a different tone. I didn't send anything that wasn't already happening, I said. That's not the point, Naomi. No, I replied calmly. That is the point. Silence. Short. Tense. He shifted tactics. You're making this look worse than it is, I almost laughed, but I didn't, because that sentence told me everything. Is it worse? I asked quietly. Or is it just visible now? He didn't answer right away. Then he said, We were on a break. There it was, the shield, the thing he thought made everything else acceptable. I let a second pass before responding. You asked for space, I said. You didn't ask for honesty. His breath caught slightly. This wasn't about whether we were technically together during those 2 days. It was about intent, about timing, about the fact that whatever he had stepped into had already been waiting before he ever said the word break. You don't know that, he said finally. His voice was lower now, less certain. I didn't need to, I replied. I just needed to see enough. Another silence. Longer this time. He tried again, but the tone had changed. Less defensive, more careful. We can fix this, he said. You didn't have to involve my dad. Not I'm sorry. Not I hurt you. Just concern over who knew. I straightened slightly, my grip on the phone loosening instead of tightening. Ryan, I said, this stopped being just between us the moment you let other people pay for a wedding you weren't protecting. He didn't interrupt me this time, didn't push back, because he knew I was right. The wedding wasn't just ours. It was structured, planned, funded, connected. And once the foundation started shifting, everyone connected to it had the right to know. I wasn't trying to embarrass you, I added. I was making sure the truth didn't stay hidden while everything else kept moving forward. He let out a slow breath. For the first time since the call started, he didn't argue, but he didn't agree either. He just paused. And that pause said more than anything else. Because it wasn't confusion, it was realization. That this wasn't something he could quietly step out of and then step back into when it suited him. Things had already moved, without him controlling the direction. Naomi, he started, softer now. I waited, but he didn't finish the sentence, because there wasn't anything left to say that would change what had already happened. I'm coming by, he said instead. Not a question, a decision. I didn't respond right away, not because I was surprised, but because I had been expecting it. Situations like this don't stay in messages forever. They build until they need a physical space to land. Okay, I said finally. Not inviting, not stopping him, just acknowledging what was already in motion. The call ended shortly after that, and for the first time since all of this started, I felt something settle inside me. Not peace, not yet, but finality. Because when someone decides to show up in person after every excuse has failed, it's not to explain. It's because reality has finally reached their front door. I set my phone down and looked around the house. The same house we had planned a future in, the same space that had once felt stable. Now it felt like something else entirely. Not broken, just finished. And by the time he got there, I already knew exactly how that moment would end. He didn't text when he got close. No, I'm outside. No warning. Just a knock on the door. Firm. Controlled. But not calm. I knew it was him before I even checked. There's a certain energy people carry when they've run out of ways to manage a situation from a distance. I walked to the door and opened it. Ryan stood there, shoulders slightly tense, eyes tired, in a way that didn't come from lack of sleep. More like things not going the way he expected. For a second, neither of us spoke. No greeting, no immediate confrontation. Just that quiet pause where both people are aware that whatever this is, it has already changed. Naomi, he said finally. My name sounded different coming from him now, less certain, less automatic. I stepped slightly to the side, not inviting him in, just giving space for the moment to settle. He didn't move forward. Instead, his eyes shifted past me, toward the yard, and that's when he saw it. The sign, white, clean, impossible to miss, for sale. He froze, not dramatically, just completely still, like his brain hadn't caught up to what his eyes were processing. What is this? He asked, his voice quieter now. Not angry, not sharp, confused. I followed his gaze for a second, then looked back at him. I'm moving forward, I said. It wasn't a dramatic line. It wasn't meant to hurt him. It was simply the most accurate way to describe what had already happened. His expression shifted, confusion first, then realization, then something heavier. You're serious? He asked. I held his gaze. I've been serious the whole time. That landed. I saw it in the way his shoulders dropped slightly, in the way his posture changed from defensive to uncertain. Because up until that moment, I think he believed this was still something he could steer, something he could explain, something he could walk back into with the right words. But the sign told a different story. This wasn't paused. This wasn't a temporary shift. This was movement. And it didn't include him. You didn't have to do all this, he said, but there was no force behind it anymore. No anger, just something closer to regret. I didn't respond right away, not because I didn't have an answer, but because some things don't need to be argued. They were already happening, I said quietly. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences. He looked away for a second, toward the street, then back at me, like he was searching for something to hold on to. Some version of this where things hadn't gone this far, but there wasn't one. What about us? He asked. The question came out softer than anything he had said before. Not defensive, not controlling, just late. I exhaled slowly. There isn't an us that works after this. No anger, no edge, just clarity. He nodded slightly, like he understood, but didn't want to. Neither of us moved. The space between us felt different now, not tense, not emotional, just settled, like everything that needed to shift already had. After a moment, he stepped back, not dramatically, not with some final line, just one step, then another, and then he turned and walked away. No argument, no second attempt, because sometimes when something becomes undeniable, there's nothing left to fight. A few weeks later, everything resolved itself without needing a final conversation. The wedding was canceled. Most of the deposits were partially recovered. The rest didn't matter as much as it had before. His father didn't reach out again. He didn't need to. What needed to be handled was handled. Ryan sent a few messages, short ones, attempts to talk, to revisit things, but they didn't change anything, because once something breaks at that level, it doesn't go back. The house sold faster than I expected. Clean, simple, like the rest of it. And in the end, there wasn't some dramatic closure. No final argument, no last explanation. Just a quiet understanding that moving forward sometimes means leaving the person who asked for space exactly where they chose to stand, outside your life.